Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and welcome to the 5th episode of the WAM Show. Of course, it's a crazy week as per usual. What's new, right? And before we get to our interviews with Josh Steffler of Freedom Free For All and Walter Harris-DeMelo of BrainFeed.ca, who is currently in studio, we have to quickly dissect something that will surely alter history, and I mean that. Deutsche Bank is currently crashing. Now, they say everything's okay, but it's not, and our suggestion is to run away as fast as you can. If you have anything to do with that bank, get out, run for your life, because they're saying that everything's going to be okay, but you're the one that's going to be paying for it. Now, they have a $64 trillion derivative exposure compared to Germany's $3.9 trillion GDP. This is a crash of epic proportions, and joining us for this week's news is author and economic systems expert John Sneisen. So, John, what on earth is going on with Deutsche Bank, and what does this mean for Germany and the rest of the world, for that matter?
Well, actually, to update the numbers, you had the numbers for the euro there, so it's even more in our dollars. It's actually $75.71 trillion right now that the derivatives book of Deutsche Bank is. Now, to put that in context, of course, that's around 20 times bigger than the whole GDP of Germany, which Deutsche Bank has their headquarters. And also to put it into further perspective, this is quite scary, actually, when you look at this number, which makes this number really scary, is that the global GDP in 2015 is $73.5 trillion. Now, that's about almost $2.5 trillion more, no less actually, than the derivatives book of Deutsche Bank. That's pretty scary, and that just shows you how over-leveraged these big banks are. I looked into some other banks. There's banks like JP Morgan and others that are very close, actually, when it comes to the amount of derivatives that Deutsche Bank has. And I also took a little bit of a look here. I got a very interesting insight here. I'm going to pull it up on my computer right in front of us here. Okay, here I actually, and we're going to post this onto the video when we are done with the interview. But here right now in front of me, I actually sit on some very interesting information. So I'm looking at the credit default swaps, which is an insurance on a default of a company. And this is for the 5-year bond of different companies. And what I looked at here is interesting. So let's take a look at one bank that are actually being looked at right now. And they're in talks today with the European Central Bank, the ECB, to do a bailout of this massively unstable bank in Italy, which have, I think it's about almost $100 billion that they have on their derivatives books right now. Well, to put that in context, so we're going to look at the UniCredit. They're ranked BBB minus. But what's interesting, their credit default swap is 243.20 basis points, they call it. I'm not too familiar with the technology yet. I'm starting to really understand this, and we're going to get deeper into it further as we go. But take a look at Deutsche Bank here. So Deutsche Bank is up here right now, which is at 238, which is very close to the bank that actually needs a bailout, that's bankrupt. Yeah. So that should put a little bit of context on it. They're basically, it takes the same amount of money to insure against default on a bank that's bankrupt and a bank that they say is completely safe, Deutsche Bank right now. Yeah. Which is quite interesting. Actually, today it became a little bit less credit dangerous to invest in Deutsche Bank, because they came out and said we're going to save our cocoa bonds, which is also another interesting thing that we're going to touch upon a little bit later. We're going to get deeper into it, but what these cocoa bonds were used as, they were used as some kind of derivative to recapitalize or something, and then they were able to use them to take out and move between stocks and bonds in Deutsche Bank, I believe. Yeah. So a very crazy type of derivative, and that people started losing faith as the price of Deutsche Bank went down. Yeah. Well, there's been some, of course, Mr. JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon just came out last week, I believe it was on Thursday or Friday. He came out and said, well, I'm going to buy several hundred, not hundred, but several $1 million of JP Morgan shares to calm the markets. Well, don't worry. I put a little bit of my a fraction of my $1 billion that I have in my wealth into save JP Morgan. Like, don't worry about it. Everything is good. I invested in it, so don't worry about it. Like, he probably put in 0.01% of what he had, but he's trying to calm the market, like the bankers did back in the Depression when they one of the heads, I forgot the name of the banker, but he came in when the Dow Jones had just plummeted. I think it was like a couple of thousand points or whatever it was. But he came in and said, I'll buy. Yeah. And then, of course, it was a dead cat bounce like we see right now. But then it just totally fell down again. A dead cat bounce is basically when the stock market goes up and hits another minor peak and then just drops, like goes even deeper down and crashes.
Well, was it a Rothschild? It's usually a Rothschild.
I don't believe it was a Rothschilds actually this time, but it was one of the heads of one of the big banks at the time.
Well, and let's put this in perspective for a second, because a lot of our viewers might not know what in the hell we're talking about right now. So that's fine. I mean, most people don't understand this terminology and everything. So to put it in perspective, I'd like to just basically lay out there that yes, this is the new world order that we've been talking about. This is a global collapse that is coming soon, and Deutsche Bank is an example of Lehman Brothers on crack. And what do you think? I mean, they're probably going to attempt to do a bail-in strategy with Deutsche Bank, I would think, to basically drain people's bank accounts. Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, don't worry. You're not going to really get your bank account drained with a bail-in. What happens is they give you bonds in the bank in a worthless bankrupt bank. So I wouldn't say you lose everything, but you lose everything.
So, okay, yeah. Spade is a spade is a spade. Yeah. And so how do you think this is going to affect us here in Canada? Because I know that this does have an international kind of relation to the stock markets, and this is going to hit Canada eventually.
With banks, we got to look at several different things right now. Like there's Venezuela, of course, and then you got Citibank being very involved there. They're high risk right now. There's other bigger banks. I was looking at some numbers here that I got right in front of me. Very interesting here. When it comes to Greece just got another bailout. I'm just baffled by how they've been bankrupt since 2008, and it continues shoving in money because Deutsche Bank and others have so much risk involved in borrowing that money. Credit Agricole of France actually sits on $3.5 billion of debt right now in Greek debt, and if that plummets, well, $3.5 billion, that's close to the $13 billion that toppled the whole real estate market and crashed the whole global markets in 2008, 7-8, when the credit default swaps and all that, all the derivatives attached to this debt, because you got to remember, it's only debt all this debt are also financialized by the banks into these derivatives and sold all over the world to big pension funds because they rate it. The rating agency says, well, I'm going to give you an AAA. Well, that means that now pension funds and other big organizations can get in and borrow and go and invest that money into that derivative or whatever that is. So now they just go and do it massively. In Norway in 2008, we had a couple of RMs, pension funds, just completely eviscerated from the credit default swaps and the collateralized debt obligations and everything that they invested in.
Well, so I mean, the fact is the sky is falling. So what can we do? What can people do to avoid getting hit? I mean, we're all going to get hit one way or another with inflation, with it's going to hit us. But how can we avoid as much of the pain as possible?
Well, one thing is doing what the rich are doing right now, and that we got told by Mr. Marco Byrne from Goldcore. He said it that he got insight from some of the richer people out in Europe right now. What they're doing is they're stacking even cash. They're putting cash in the gold vaults because they want their money out of the banking system. So in my opinion, that's number one. Be very afraid of having any money in the banking system that you don't need to pay bills or whatever. Number two would, of course, position yourself in the oldest precious metals of the world that have always won over fiat, which is gold and silver. And then, of course, food. I would say probably even trumping that again is food and water, things that is necessary to keep you alive.
Yeah, and shelter.
You can't really chew on the precious metals. In a crisis, if you sit on a whole berg of it, even though that it has massive value, you can't really survive on it. So definitely, you need to have food and water, have commodities, have something of value, because this fiat currency empire is just going to come and collapse down. And just read history books. It's very simple. There's like whatever these bankers think they're doing, the central bankers of today, they believe that they have financially engineered something. I don't know if that's what they think, that they're gods or whatever, but
or they're just evil.
Yeah, it could be that too.
Yeah. And I mean, as you were saying before, I mean, paper money will always revert to zero eventually. I mean, when it's based on nothing, our money is based on
history books.
History, absolutely. Look at the Byzantine Empire. Look at China. Look at Germany. Look at Zimbabwe.
Well, just in the 1900s, there were over 100 currency that failed. So just a little bit of tidbit information there. So it just tells you what we're up against here. And there's like right now, the Venezuelan bolivar is, after 8 years of existence, is about to fail again. Yeah,
we're looking at potentially 720% inflation rates this year, 470, I believe, last year. And I mean, it's just getting crazy. Even the Huffington Post is saying, we're looking at potentially a 720% inflation rate.
Well, we can just sit here and relax. But when it comes to a hyperinflation scenario, things are just calm before the storm. And then within a year, when people start losing trust in any currency, it's eviscerated, like it disappears within a year. And it goes from, if you had $1 million in your bank account, you'd be worthless at the end of that year.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be paying $100 trillion for a loaf of bread. And I'm pretty sure everyone would relate to that sentiment. So thank you, John. We have so much to talk about, but we can't all fit it into this beginning segment. We will be right back with Josh Steffler of Freedom Free For All. Hey everybody, we are back, and we're joined by a true champion for the message of liberty and in independent media. We are joined by Josh Steffler from Freedom Free For All, which of course we at WAM are proudly partners with, and not centralized, as would be the case with most independent medias, as we are working really hard together in our own ways to try and get out that message that you aren't getting from the mainstream media. And I'm always honored to speak with Mr. Steffler. So, Josh.
How's it going, Josh? Thanks for having me on. Love the WAM Show. It's going great. Glad to be partnering up with you guys over at WAM. I remember following you guys when you were doing Winnipeg alternative media way back in the day, when you were doing the stuff on the fluoridation and the fluoridation fight, right? So you guys are champions out there.
Yeah, the good old days at Winnipeg Alternative Media. You've always been a great supporter of us at WAM, and we've always been really thankful because, of course, in the world of independent media, the point isn't to compete. The point is to work together to get that truth out. So, Josh, I wanted to ask you, what was your process getting into truth and liberty movement, and what happened to bring you to where you are now?
Well, I kind of knew a bit of stuff about 9/11. I knew it was important on the day it happened. I remember I was 22. It was my day off from work, and my buddy woke me up. Josh, the United States is under attack. So we got up, and, being typical young Canadians, I'm a little bit embarrassed about this now, but we kind of celebrated, watched on TV, screw America, because this is before I'd learned a lot about the patriot movement, the liberty movement of America. Most Canadians, we're kind of like, oh, America, they suck, we hate them, but we're better than them. So I remember seeing it and thinking, this is going to change the world. So I went out and I bought a bunch of newspapers, which I still have from the day, September 11th, 2001. And then it kind of faded into the background until one day I went to the library to get a book for my daughter. Was looking for Alice in Wonderland. And the library accidentally gave me this book called Alice in Wonderland and the Twin Towers by David Icke. And I was like, this is weird. But, I kind of always trust the universe to just provide things, right? So I took it home. I started reading it. Now my mind was blown, right? Like all of the stuff that he was talking about, the secret societies, the vast amount of evil, that started me researching 9/11, getting into architects and engineers, and realizing, this is why the world is the way it is. There's a dark cabal that has taken power from the people, from the governments, and so ever since then, I started just doing a little bit of research, and then I started bumping into, and I thought this was synchronicity. I started bumping into the Victoria 9/11 Truth Group in their activism, out and about. I saw them at the legislature on Canada Day, and they gave me a DVD that was Architects and Engineers. And so at first I was a little bit apprehensive, but I went to a few of their meetings and found that they weren't these crazy conspiracy theorists that the news was telling us they were. They weren't anti-Canadian or anti-American. It was the anti-war movement, and I'd found it. So I started getting involved with them, and we kind of morphed it from Vic 9/11 Truth to We Are Change Victoria, and expanding beyond just 9/11 into things like geoengineering, chemtrails, the New World Order, Illuminati, genetically modified organization or organisms, all these things that a lot of conspiracy theorists talk about, which aren't actually conspiracy theory, they're fact. There is a cabal, there is this dangerous organization there. So I met our co-hosts, Greg Hill and Brad Rhodes from Freedom Free for All, and a lot of our back-end group, Paul Stein and Jesse Gibson, at We Are Change. And we were making videos, but we were all kind of making our own separate videos and filming our events. And we thought, I think it was Paul who discovered that we could get on local access television. So we started making shows, and the first shows are so amateur. It's hilarious. But we got on Shaw. People wrote in and complained about it. If you've seen Freedom Free for All, you hear that lady complain. She's one of the ladies that actually complained after, I think it was our first or second episode, and Shaw sent it to us, and we've just been going hardcore ever since. We run with really low tech stuff, laptops, camcorders, microphones. If you saw our last show, we kind of messed up. We experimented with running Skype and live stream at the same time, and it didn't work.
Yeah, actually, with our guest in studio right now, Walter Harris-DeMelo from BrainFeed.ca. Yeah, I give you guys a lot of credit for what you guys do. I can't imagine the stress of putting together a live show, because I try to put together a pre-recorded show, and I'll tell you, man, it's not easy. And you guys have serious balls with some of the stuff that you're putting on public access television.
Yeah.
I gotta say,
yeah.
I mean, it's quite entertaining to watch how many people you must be waking up at the same time as how many people must be going absolutely crazy at what they're hearing when it comes to global warming, when it comes to guests like Dr. Tim Ball, who you've had many times.
Yeah, the cognitive dissonance must hit them hard.
So you mentioned 9/11 Truth. Now, what are your thoughts on the world empire being created around us today? From war to debt slavery to the people happily giving up their civil liberties and PC culture stomping on reality. What do you think is going on?
Well, that's kind of why I do what I do. I mean, I'm terrified for my children. I'm worried that they're going to be living as adults in a slave society. And yeah, we live in a slave society pretty much now, where you're stuck with pretty much worthless Canadian dollars, American dollars, fiat currency. The wars, which, 9/11 happened how long ago? And yet we're still fighting in Iraq and Syria and that whole area. Imagine what could have been done if we had invested that war money on peace measures, infrastructure, education, space exploration. We've wasted a huge amount of humanity's time, massive amounts of human lives, labor, liberty, and I'm saddened to see the general public is under mass mind control, and they don't even know it. The television, the news radio, the talk radio, the TV shows, the movies, it programs people, and you hear people who think that they're thinking, but then they regurgitate the exact words that you've read in the newspaper and heard on television and heard on talk radio, the program. And so these, you know, they're not zombies, because I feel bad for them. Many people in the truth movement, they use derogatory terms for people that have not woken up, like sheeple or slaves, and I feel bad for them because I was one of them, and it took an accident to wake me up. And I just think that the way we can beat them is we have to wake people up enough to start defending their liberties and their freedoms, stop depending on to provide these things for them, because for government to provide, they must take away, right? Government doesn't have anything.
And you mentioned just kind of the name calling within the movement, and I think a big point here is that we're trying to wake up those people. We're not trying to shoo them away. We're not here to pat each other on the back and say, yes, I know that too. Yeah. No, this is about trying to get to people who don't know anything about what we're talking about, because those are the people that are going to join our side and fight when it comes down to it,
Yeah, and I take a very political path because I see it as a peaceful path. I've joined the Libertarian Party. I've participated, I've run in municipal elections, provincial elections, and federal elections. I haven't won, but I'm not going to stop because, not everybody, but a lot of people are just waiting for the shit to hit the fan so that they can really start the fight. But the political process, at least we can say we tried. At least we have the moral high ground to say, look, we were here warning you. We were here defending everybody's liberty. We were here defending a fundamental aspect of a free society. And we tried our best, because I don't want to have a civil war here. I don't want to have war, anywhere. It's bad enough that we're involved in drone striking and air striking Syrian, Iraqi, Afghani targets. Imagine that coming here, it's not what I want. It's not what anybody wants. I want freedom. I want liberty, and I want to wake people up enough so that they'll join our side and defend their liberty and their freedom instead of attacking us like we're kooks, or that we're that programmed term conspiracy theorists.
Well, and unfortunately, all of our claims keep getting vindicated. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would love to be wrong. I mean, I can't tell you how much I want to be wrong sometimes, because these things make me sick to my stomach. I feel terrible for the way humanity is going, and I know that it's up to people like you and I know it's hard to be optimistic. I find it all the time. I'm sitting there and I'm going, sometimes I wonder if I'm going to get through to anybody. But the point is, we got to keep trying, because it's our fault for everything if we just give up and step back. And I know that you are really passionate about a lot of issues, Josh. So what is the biggest issue you're focusing on right now?
The biggest issue is probably the loss of civil liberties in Canadian culture, in Western culture. And it combines with quite a few things, like media. The mass media mind control programming is what is undermining that essential liberty. So the most important thing to me is the loss of our liberties, because I may not live to see the end of the fight, but I'm raising children that have strong values, and they value freedom, they value the family, they value liberty and justice and all these things. And it's got to be liberty, because I don't want to be a slave. I don't want them to be a slave. And it's coming at us from all sides. The economic front, the war front, the media propaganda front. It's all assaulting our minds. And so...
Well, liberty is all we have in life. I mean, that's literally the whole basis of life itself, our ability to freely move,
to not aggress others. And I think it's a beautiful thing that is taken for granted. People don't understand the difference between just not being able to deal with like how horrible the world is, but still being able to love humanity.
Yeah.
And I love humanity.
Yeah.
I love the people on this planet, and I want them to be free. And people are too quickly able to walk into this whole kind of government outlook of things where, you have to give up your liberties so that we could be safe. Well, no, as Benjamin Franklin said, if you're willing to give up a little bit of liberty for a little bit of temporary security, you will get and you will deserve neither.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate what you do, Josh. Now, I mean, you've been putting out a lot of great work for years. I wanted to ask about something I recently saw on your videos up on Facebook, which was something I couldn't believe what I was seeing. You guys were doing an overpass thing for 9/11 Truth.
Yeah.
And a vehicle just wiped out behind you. What was that?
So that actually, there's people in our little group that actually thought that was a conspiracy as well, because we were up on the overpass every 9/11 for the past 5 years or so. We've been on overpasses holding our signs. It's an expression. It's free expression, free speech. We're allowed to do it. And this guy was just not paying attention and wipes out and flips his truck. Now, even weirder is the guy immediately gets out. He's wearing a Hollywood shirt. The truck is not damaged. The tires look balder than Jesse Ventura. I don't know. And it was very strange. And he tried to blame us for it. The sad thing was many people were scared. Oh my God, the cops are going to come. And a bunch of people left. And it was very fortunate that I was there with like good, strong men that stayed. We took care of it. And the police didn't even come up and talk to us because they knew it's not our fault that this dude wasn't paying attention. And it was so crazy. That was the only time anything like that has ever happened on 9/11 for us. But
well, and how long does it take to read a sign that says 9/11 as an inside job? How does that knock you off the road? And I noticed in the video the guy gets up and he's kind of brushing himself off. And of course, the first thing he does before he's like checking to see if he's like missing body parts, he looks up at you guys and goes like, "Oh,"
he points at us. Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny. I don't blame people for having some suspicions, but there are a lot of stupid people out there, so it's probably chalked up to that.
I chalk it up to stupidity, and just the guy's tires were so bald, like it was crazy. But I mean, fortunately, nobody was hurt. And nobody got in trouble with the law because what we were doing wasn't illegal. And it really kind of showed me who actually does have your back. It's easy to be a tough keyboard warrior on Facebook. It's easy to show up to a little thing and hold a sign and disappear into the crowd. But when things go sideways, I was glad to see that I had good compatriots that were willing to stand there and stay with us, like Ryan Elson of Dissembling, Greg Hill, Ian McIntosh. These guys stood with us, stayed with us, and we dealt with it.
Yeah. And honestly, I love your show. My friends and I all agree. We sit down every Tuesday and we watch. And sometimes I rob you of a few viewers because we're all sitting in front of one computer. So there's more viewers than it looks like.
Nice.
But, we always have a great time watching. There hasn't been a single episode we haven't enjoyed. And I was wondering who, if anyone in the world, and you guys kind of asked me this on your show, who would you want to interview that you haven't interviewed already?
Ron Paul. Flat out Ron Paul. I love the guy. I listen to his speeches. I've messed around with audio software, putting his speeches to like music. I've burned them to CDs and listened to them in the car. The man is an inspiration. He literally lit the fire of libertarianism and liberty in my heart. And if I could have anyone on the show that's alive, it'd be Ron Paul.
Yeah, there's really, I think the same thing comes from most people when they are asked inside the liberty movement, who would you want to talk to?
Yeah.
Ron Paul, of course, because you can't really, that guy must be a robot or something, because that guy has no controversy. Except for, his ideological viewpoints, some people might not agree with. but he's never been in the middle of any controversy. I mean, we're all human, and this guy has been pretty vigilant about not doing or saying anything stupid. It's quite unbelievable, you know?
And as
And
he's left, now we're all Ron Paul. It's up to us to spread those fires of liberty that he's lit in the
yeah,
hearts of all of us. So, I've got a
yeah, I
Ron
mean,
Paul shirt. My daughters, when it comes to like my birthday or fun times that they're drawing cards for me, they always draw me a picture of Ron Paul. I love it. If you go up on my
yeah.
Facebook page, my cover picture is a picture that my daughter drew of Ron Paul riding a dinosaur yelling freedom. So
I've seen that.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
oh, that's great. I always have huge respect for Ron Paul, and you made a really good point there about we are all Ron Paul. And actually, I was talking with Richard Gage from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth back in 2018, and he asked me, "Well, what do you think about Rand Paul?" And I kind of told him, and I've kind of stuck with this point ever since, that Rand Paul does say a lot of great things. He certainly isn't his father, and I think too many of us are just trying to grab onto anything we can and try and say this is the next Ron Paul. But no, we are the next Ron Paul. We are the continuation, and it's up to us. We can't. It's like this idea that we need to wait for somebody else to do the job for us. Well, you and I both know we're not going to get anywhere if we
No.
wait. It's never going to happen. We are the people that we wait for.
Yeah.
So, Josh, I love your show. Can you tell our viewers about your show, the concept, and the importance of all of us working together without centralized control?
Okay, so my show is called Freedom Free for All. We air it live on Tuesday nights at 7:30 on the internet. And then we also take half of the show and put it on cable access television. We're not allowed. Shaw is a lovely company that only wants to put the best quality stuff on television. So they don't let us, they hit us with all these copyright things, don't let us use fair use as an argument. But the first half of the show that we put online, it's Brad, Greg, and I discussing whichever things that we want. I'm constantly trying to bring humor into the show as well because, this stuff will kill us if we don't laugh about it.
We need it.
And Brad is constantly reminding us that history repeats itself, and he's bringing up these things from hundreds of years ago, religion and past historical views. So he gives us this real historical narrative, and Greg finds amazing, hard-hitting reports, and he does a lot of investigative journalism on these world government organizations like SIGI, the Center for International Governance Institute. And we have a lot of fun with it. And then in the second half, we do an open round table where we invite a guest on. And that has morphed to the point where we can sometimes have guests in our studio. We are still working on getting Skype so that we can Skype worldwide guests in. But we've got rock stars in our own town here like David Kevin Lindsay and Dr. Tim Ball. And we work together, put this show, and we reach out to other new media people to help these guys succeed as well. Like we put your updates on our show, we put Walter's updates on our show, because we're not in competition with you. We are collaborators, and we want to connect people and inspire them to do the same thing that we're doing, to get the word out, because that's how things change. You may not be able to change my friend's views, but you'll be able to change your friend's views. And so maybe your friend starts their own show and so on and so on, and it'll snowball. Could you imagine if we had shows like Freedom Free for All and WAM and BrainFeed on every public access television station in Canada? It would be amazing.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So,
and I mean, you guys have such a great fluctuation on your show because, I mean, you bring humor, but you bring also hard facts to the show, and you have that passion for liberty. Brad is an excellent person for more of this serious, but always very real fact that he brings. He's got a lot of passion too, and of course, Greg Hill. That guy has a lot of energy in him, man, and I love watching him talk. And Paul Stein, all these guys, it's a perfect mix on your show. to kind of get a little bit of everything from the truth movement. And we always really appreciate you guys playing our ads. Actually, in a moment, we're going to be playing an ad from you guys here on the WAM Show. So we're always really happy to talk with you. And I want our viewers to know, go to Freedom Free for All on Facebook. Go to We Are Change Victoria. Go to freedomfreeforall.com, right? And always check the YouTube. You got live streams. People get to join in on the conversation.
We have live stream. So during the show, we actually take questions from the live chat. That was a big thing for us, was being able to interact with our viewers live. And it actually adds a lot of interactivity with the show as well. It's gone are the days where news broadcasters just sit and talk at you. We want to talk with you. So that's what we do.
And a show like this and a show like yours would not have been possible 10 years ago.
Nope.
We would have had to throw like $1 million out of our pocket.
Yeah, it's amazing what we're doing with laptops, microphones, and camcorders nowadays, and Wi-Fi.
It's a true revolution.
Yeah,
it's a true
decentralized, and you wouldn't have this in some communist country everything's all government run, right? We've got laptops and camcorders, and we're able to compete with multi-million-dollar corporations that are they're bleeding viewers every week, especially mainstream news, because it's garbage. It's it's junk food for your brain, and we are the health food for your brain. We're the kale smoothies, we're the triple berry smoothies, we're the flu shots that are like kale and wheatgrass and those green power shots. We're the good food and they're the junk food now, and the tide's turning. The tide is turning.
Absolutely. And we are beating them where they stand. It's quite incredible to watch these multi-million-dollar operations barely be able to match up to what we are doing for usually, money out of pocket. We don't make much, if any, money out of this. And of course, we're still managing to beat them because the truth always prevails. And that's why I love the work you do, Josh. Also, I want to get people to check out freedomfreeforall.com, and hey, you might get a silver coin if you give them a donation. So check that out.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That may not last much longer if silver skyrockets in value. We've got, like you saw on the show last week, we've got a few stacks of silver coins that we're offering to people for a $50 donation. We will send you a 1-ounce silver coin, and those supplies are very limited because it's jumping in price quite a bit, as our dollar collapses, and silver is mess around with the value. These banks mess around with the paper values of silver. We can't offer it forever, so come to freedomfreeforall.com and donate today, and you can get your own silver coin.
Yeah, folks, get it while it still lasts, because silver, people are projecting it might jump a total tenfold in the next 5 years. So you're going to want that silver now, not later. Now, you don't want to buy high. So thank you very much, Josh. We hope to have you on again.
Definitely.
And just keep up the incredible work. You're a true champion. You got the whole crew over there at Freedom Free for All. And of course, as you always say, be safe and be free.
All right. Thanks, Josh.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the second part of the show as well. We are going to be talking with Walter Harris-DeMelo of BrainFeed.ca right after this promo from Freedom Free for All.
Hi, I'm Josh Steffler.
I'm Brad Rhodes.
And I'm Greg Hill.
And here at Freedom Free for All, we are proud partners with Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media. Last week on our show, I kicked City Hall's ass dressed like a Sasquatch.
And last week on my segment, I talked about why we're really being dragged into these foreign wars and what we're really doing over there.
And I talked about the Center for International Governance and Innovation, a Canadian think tank that's undermining our freedoms talking about sustainability reporting. Be sure to tune in to freedomfreeforall.com. Watch our show Tuesdays at 7:30 Pacific Time. Back to you, Josh.
Hey everybody, and we are back, and we're joined, of course, by Walter Harris-DeMelo of BrainFeed.ca. Excellent website. It's always very eye-catching when you see that green on your timeline on Facebook, and you're scrolling down, and you always know it's BrainFeed. And you always have so much good stuff on your site too. You have a mixture of yourself and so many other people in the independent media world, and it's really a great thing to see, especially coming from Manitoba. I mean, it's kind of weird, isn't it, that there's so many shows coming out of Manitoba, so much independent media. It's like the last place you'd expect it to happen.
True enough, yeah.
But I mean, I really enjoy your show, and for the viewers, can you tell us about conspiracy therapy and what made you start the show and what's it about?
Okay, conspiracy therapy, really just an idea that I saw a need for people to maybe in the conspiracy realm, like people that get caught up in the whole conspiracy therapy or theory realm, they sometimes get paranoid, get lost in the whole confusion and stuff. So my whole idea was to bring on people and ask them questions that may help people out there kind of get out of that vicious cycle of paranoia or talking about this and trying to figure out a way out of this whole confusing layer or maze. And then also it was just an excuse to interview people that I've watched their work and wanted to talk to anyways. So it worked out pretty well.
Mm-hmm. And we all kind of get that feeling going into that realm when we first kind of discover that things just aren't right. Mm-hmm. That feeling of complete paranoia in your stomach, that feeling of kind of looking behind you and looking side to side. And because I remember I had known about this kind of stuff for quite a while, about the Bilderberg Group, about the New World Order, about 9/11. But I remember the specific moment when I was watching Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura, when I watched the Bilderberg episode, and I watched this guy get chased out of Bilderberg by another car that was obviously a federal agent. Yeah. And after I saw that, I have to admit, like for about 3 or 4 days after that, I was going through some serious issues of like looking behind my back and like I just didn't feel right. And it's kind of that awakening, and you kind of have that as you mentioned, conspiracy therapy, where we kind of move out of that complete paranoia and into more reality, because the fact is, reality is terrifying, and we need to get around it somehow. So I saw you had Sean Stone, filmmaker Oliver Stone's son, on your show. How did that happen, and what was that like?
Well, actually, I noticed that Sean Stone was doing interviews with other pretty small independent and alternative medias, and I thought, well, it seems like this guy is reaching out to people like us and are willing to talk to us. And I mean, I'm a fan of his father's work, of course, and he's been on Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura. He was part of that, I think season 2 or 3. Yeah. And he just seemed like a really interesting dude that, with a very interesting message, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought, might as well give it a shot, and within a month I was recording my first episode of Conspiracy Therapy with Sean Stone, and that was amazing for me, right? So it was absolutely awesome to get different points of view, because like he talks about more spiritual stuff too, right? More dimensional, like what's going on really, right? And it's interesting to wrap your brain and keep your mind open about things, and do it in a fun way that it doesn't make you scared to deal with these or discuss these issues, right?
Yeah. And what would you say is your one issue that you could honestly say, I've got this, I can talk about this for hours? What's something that you really are passionate about when it comes to the truth movement?
Well, that's a strange question, and because honestly, I feel like I'm a jack of all trades kind of thing. I'm not really master of anything. I've just been watching the movement build for about like almost over 10 years, right? And looking at what other people are doing, and looking at what organizations, what they're doing in truth speakers, and just kind of observant, becoming observant about where we need to head with things, and really contemplating like how do we get ourselves out of this, right? And what needs to happen. And I think that would be the message that I would say I'm really focused on, whether or not I feel comfortable with it, because I don't really say that I may be a pro or a specialist in any specific message, but it's more about just asking, why are we going down this path, and what can we do to get out of it, and how can we make things better for not everyone, but the general population. How do we come together? So I think that is what I've been focusing on, and really trying to look at the whole the movement as a whole, and try to find that answer. And really push that.
And I was talking with Josh Steffler from Freedom Free for All in the last segment about this kind of, and it's kind of like this. We know that there's something going on, and we can't wait for somebody else to do it. It's up to us to do something about it. And of course, it comes from all different realms, from everything from the TPP to C-51 here in Canada, to the National Defense Authorization Act in the States. You know, with the food we eat, the water we drink, what's sprayed in the sky, what's happening to our dollar. So how do you kind of grasp like things coming in and attacking from all angles and be able to make sense of it? I mean, it's a difficult time to live in.
No, it's definitely. I mean, it takes hours and hours and hours of research by some people, especially because everything is so new and everything's always changing. Like you mentioned, like we're being attacked by all sides. Once you start really looking at the system and how the system's kind of been built and how it's maintained and what its agenda is, the system of control, the system that goes against our freedoms, the system that hurts innocent people and is violent and all these like awful things and corrupt. When you start looking at that and you realize, holy smokes, it's everywhere, and then you just to bring it back home, right? I mean, like we mentioned, the TPP and the wars all over the place, and the system. If we recognize that the system of control is attacking us and after us, we have to remember that we're a part of the community that's built this thing too, right? We're a part of a family and the friends around us. Like we have to remember the network, and I think to network, but I think the people that we reach around us, in our daily lives, we have to remember that that's really where all the power comes from. And if we can really start not manipulating, but changing the way we deal with each other, changing the way we deal with local family and friends, then a lot of the stuff that's happening over in across seas and stuff like that, I think a lot of that will start changing. It's about a transition phase. And I think that's really what I've come to recognize, that we've got a mess now, and then there's got to be a transition phase into something better. And we are at what you're doing with WAM and what I'm trying to do, even though my message might be broken up at times because there's so much going on.
Always.
It is that finding that transition phase that will bring about the best. You know what I mean? With the best possible outcome. So.
And I mean, you do a lot of work towards kind of unity. I mean, one thing I noticed about you and BrainFeed is that you've often just kind of pushed for that necessity for unity and to come together as different independent medias, because we can't have division in this. We don't compete. We work together in order to get that message of the truth out. And I notice you on like basically every media I'm looking at, because I'm doing something similar. I'm trying to unite with as many people as possible. I'll see you on, the Ocelli Effect, or I'll see you on Freedom Free for All and several other places. And you really are just about getting everyone together, aren't you?
Well, I think that's where the power comes from, and it's important to, I guess, balance, the whole collectivism versus the individuality aspect of it. And really, we were talking about it earlier, defining terms and understanding the importance of both sides.
Absolutely.
And utilizing networks. Maintaining your individuality and your creativity and your creative spirit and that passion that you've got with whatever you're doing, whatever your interests are, but also looking at the importance of bringing other people in, and building those connections and building upon what they're doing as well, and doing and figuring out in a way to communicate without hurting each other. Effective communication skills to build upon each other's great work.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And there's so much great work out there, and much of it's by you. And I wanted to ask, something that's been on a lot of people's minds lately, it's quite terrifying, and I was wondering what your thought on it is about this war on ISIS. And everyone kind of sees there's something not right. We know that the U.S. government armed and funded and trained a lot of these guys. What's your take on ISIS and what's happening right now?
Yeah, it seems like it's all designed on purpose, because they show it in movies like The Children of Men. That's another movie that kind of gives you a glimpse about where things may be heading. The whole idea of bringing in a civil war maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, and pushing that division, because as soon as they start dividing us all up into different groups, different religions, different genres, races, whatever, then we're more easily controlled. And that's like, textbook stuff for controlling people, right? You break it down, control, divide and conquer. So when it comes to ISIS, I would say that the whole refugee crisis is something that is very important to the agenda that's ahead.
Absolutely.
And the way the general population deals with that is really going to be telling of what type of world we head into.
Yeah.
And if you want to get into specifics of how I feel about things, I think that Josh Steffler, when I was talking to him, he had a great point. He thinks that, the women and children, maybe we let those people in because they're trying to get out of a war-torn country, whereas the people, like the fighting young adults and stuff like that, should, and men, of fighting age and stuff, maybe they should stay back and help build a country, build their country.
It's
right?
such a difficult issue because, of course, the issue in itself is part of the divisiveness, and I completely agree. I mean, it's scary when there are obviously real people in pain, suffering because the U.S., for example, has desecrated their country, and then there's all those people that are from like Armenia and other places around the Middle East who are businessmen and they're well off, and they're finding out if they come here they'll get free stuff. Now, my take has always been the idea that as myself personally, I'm an anarcho-capitalist, so therefore I believe in bringing your body where you so choose. The whole land is yours, except for when you're infringing on other people's property rights and then they have to pay for you, where that's basically a complete infringement of individual rights. So it's kind of hard to buffer between the two. And obviously it's pretty easy to destroy the Middle East for decades and decades under the guise of trying to keep us safe, and then arm all the insane people and all the crazy people who grew up in this horrible kind of landscape. And then, of course, a lot of these people are on drugs and all sorts of stuff, and then they have all these guns and tanks and everything that the U.S. accidentally left behind. Like 1,000 army tanks. It's so easy to misplace 1,000 army tanks.
Yeah.
And it's something that it's going to affect all of us, because right now, if we say a spade is a spade and a diamond is a diamond or whatever, we're considered racist. But wait a second. This isn't even a race we're talking about. This is a conflict that is being synthetically created by the government in order to divide us, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And it's something that is extremely important in current day society, because we will be feeling this in the next coming years. Germany's already feeling it.
Well, I think it goes to show we need to really work on how we deal with each other as a general population, right? I mean, how do we rationally get out of such a difficult situation, that the elite put us in, because it's, like we say, it's designed. These guys were armed and funded, so it's a big test of how the general population go about figuring out how to deal with terrorism, or how to deal with people that do things differently, right? And I think in the long run, it'll really benefit people in general, because then we'll be able to work together a lot better, right?
And we've got C51 going on here in Canada. We've got the TPP coming up right away that we're not allowed to look at, but trust me, we're in for a lot here. So, Walter, what do you think of Prime Minister Trudeau Jr.?
I think it's important that we recognize that looking at leaders is not going to get us out of what's going on.
Yeah.
And we need to, become leaders ourselves, all of us, and even more so, just become regular humans again, and then just work together instead of looking at Justin Trudeau to fix everything. And especially if we can't recognize, like the general population can't recognize that, he's just going and doing the same old routine and going with the globalism and going with what his father set up, and he's just, maintaining status quo. I mean, we really need to recognize how these people, the system operates, right? And once a certain portion of people are able to recognize that and then spread that, and we start changing the way we act, like culturally, like in Canada, if we can start changing our culture, so instead of like worshiping people or idolizing people like Justin Trudeau or other politicians, we start idolizing things like being able to read and write properly, or skills, survival instincts,
absolutely,
and things that will get us through if there is a huge economic collapse, things that we need, how to network properly, investments, how to invest wisely, how to make proper choices. these are things that Justin Trudeau doesn't show to people, or that's not openly pushed by the government.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, let's face it. I mean, you look at the United States, they had George W. Bush, we had Stephen Harper, both extremely hated, and for good reason. But let's face it, they're puppets. They were the perfect instrument to bring along the suave New World Order puppet like Obama or Trudeau, where everyone just willingly gives all to the government and says, thank you, government, please control me some more. And I mean, that is a perfect scenario for the elites to have the guy that's, nice hair, the cool suave guy who, by the way, doesn't seem to spend a moment in office. He's been out doing PR stunts constantly, kissing babies, putting jackets on refugees. And I'm saying, like, I'm sorry, somebody else can do that. If you're the prime minister, shouldn't you be in parliament, doing something? But it seems like every single day there's something new that we see from Trudeau, where he's out somewhere doing some publicity campaign, going to Star Wars with a bunch of sick kids.
Yeah, because that's important, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it is important to bring sick kids to a movie.
Yeah, but that's not a job of the prime minister,
not.
right?
His job is to make sure that there aren't as many people like that. His job is to make sure there aren't as many refugees. There aren't as many, because let's face it, right now, Justin Trudeau is arming and funding and training. Well, Justin Trudeau, sorry, I should put that in quotations because it's not actually him. Arming and training more rebels.
It's what he represents, which is the globalist agenda and stuff. I think one of the main things that I want to keep focusing on and learn more about and try to speak, as best as I can about in the future is stuff like, survival and recognizing that Justin Trudeau is not going to be there for you when things go down, with the economy collapses and something happens in your life. It's not going to be Justin Trudeau that gets us out of this. It's going to be you and your family and your friends and those around you. And if you're looking for someone like a leader that's going to solve all your problems, you're going to be let down in a big way, and it's going to really hurt your future and the future of those around you.
If you're looking for a leader, look no further than yourself, because no one's going to help you unless you help yourself. You need to be that change, and I think that's something that is a big part of, a big instrument in what we do in independent media, is to be that change. As cliche as it sounds. I mean, Luke Rudowski named his media best, "We are change," right? And it comes from that Gandhi quote, and it couldn't be more important in 2016 and going forward, because everything seems to be collapsing in, but it's our job to try and be optimistic and try and put out that information so other people can save themselves, because it's not all about us giving you the information, folks. You have to take that information and do something with it, because your future depends on your ability to be able to control your own actions, to be sustainable in your own way, to grow your own food, to have your own shelter, to be able to have real money, not the paper crap that we find, in our wallets.
And also, I just want to add, to also support people that are putting themselves out there to bring you information, like what Josh is doing, and what World Alternative Media and other people like Dan Dix and other alternative media is out there. I mean, it's really important, and that's another thing that I focus on in BrainFeed and BrainFeed.tv, is the idea that we really need to support people that are willing to give up so much to bring you information, because we live in a day and age where it seems like information is valueless now.
Yeah.
It's like people, I mean, if it was a video game, or if it was this or something silly, it has so much value, but information, people kind of just, it's free on YouTube, so it doesn't matter. Or, I'm just gonna, it's like art. People don't even want to pay for art anymore. Right?
We give you guys information for free because we care about you, but we also can't just do it for free all the time. We will continue to put that information up for free, but all of us could really use the help, because I, for one, don't make any money at this. I don't know about you, Walter, but I mean,
very little.
Yeah,
especially with what's going on with YouTube and how they're going after alternative media creators and stuff. Right?
They've banned monetizing controversial videos, and controversy fits into almost any scenario. So, like Walter said, you got to represent. I don't know if you could see this here. We got Press for Truth logo on my laptop. Just little things like that.
Well, the fact that we mentioned ISIS means that you won't be able to monetize this video, which cuts into your funding.
Exactly, and isn't that insanity when the news becomes that treason? Which, of course, as Ron Paul said, truth is treason in the empire of lies. Now, Walter, what's your long-term goal for the message of truth and liberty? Because I know you've kind of fluctuated. You've always put out a consistent message, but you've kind of fluctuated between reports, documentaries, the show. What's your long-term goal for BrainFeed?
Just learn as much as I can from people like yourself and other people talking about it, and try to build as many bridges with those type of people that are willing to work together and get over their ego and work to bring something better. And that's really just the main focus. If I do some reports here or there, I'm going to continue doing the conspiracy therapy to talk to people that I want to talk to and get their thoughts on things, and really just try to figure out how we can get ourselves out of this. And a lot of it has to do with saving yourself and becoming your own leader and working to build a community.
Absolutely, well said. And right before we go, I just got to ask, because I've been asked this a few times. If you had one person in the world that you've never interviewed, who would it be? Who is that person that you would give anything to interview?
Oh, that's a hard one, man.
Name a few if you want.
I don't know. It's probably some musician. I'd love to interview Serge Tankian from System of a Down.
Oh yeah.
Or like someone from Rage Against the Machine.
Oh yeah.
Or some of these people that have really put themselves out there, and I'm sure they've got some really huge experiences on the inside as well as the outside of everything.
Yeah, well, one interesting thing about being in media is, and I mean, if I would have known in school that I was going to do this, I would have what? Excuse me? You're going to be what? And it gets to that point where you kind of see someone that you are a big fan of, and you think, hey, maybe I might be able to talk with them. You know, I'm a fan of yours, Walter. I'm a fan of Josh Steffler's. I'm a fan of Dan Dix and We Are Change, etc. There's so many good independent medias out there these days, and there's absolutely no excuse to be uninformed these days. There are so many great platforms out there. You don't have to agree with everything. I'm openly biased because I believe that it's up to you. You see what I am, and then if you don't like it, you don't have to watch. There's always other people out there. So I urge the viewer to please check out BrainFeed.ca. Check them out on Facebook as well. You're on Twitter, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't use it very much.
Yeah.
It's a constant feed. I've got it set up as auto feed.
Twitter's been banning people from saying things anyway, so that's all good.
I was going to add to it, just want to make it quick, is that people need to put themselves out there and listen to things even if they don't like it, because sometimes you'll find the most valuable lesson there.
Absolutely, and I mean, that's, I think, how we all got to where we are today. We took a chance and looked at something we thought was crazy, and there you go. Well, Walter, thank you very much for joining us. You're welcome anytime. And guys, check out BrainFeed.ca. Can't tell you enough. Great stuff. I really enjoyed your interviews with Sean Stone and people of the likes. Of course, John Sneisen, who of course does a lot of reports here at WAM, was on your show. So check it out, guys, and we will see you either next week or the week after. I'm kind of an anarchist, so I don't really plan ahead that much. So we'll see you sometime soon on episode 6. Stay tuned, and remember, find the truth and be the change.